People. Hey, everybody, this is Wayman Daniels with Level Up with special guest attorney at law, Safa Robinson. How you doing, Safa?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great now that we have you on the show. I was reading over your bio and some things about you. I
hmm
noticed that you went to Roberts Wesleyan College and received your bachelor's, and then you went to Buffalo School of Law and received your doctorate. Can you tell me what was the process and how did you want to ever become a lawyer?
My passion to become a lawyer came as a child. I was exposed to the court system early on, so I knew that I knew that I wanted to be in it and present within it, and I had a lot of exposure because of it. So
Okay.
naturally, over time, as I went to high school and decided that I would settle on a profession or a degree field for undergrad, I decided to
Okay.
go. Um, I decided to go with criminal justice as my background. And then in my second or third year of undergrad, I decided that I would be going to law school.
Okay. So you went to law school. How long did it take you to receive your doctorate?
3 years. So it's 3 years to get your
Ooh, three
doctorate degree,
years.
your law degree.
Okay. Okay. So it took you 3 years. Now, when you were growing up, what were your influences that made you want to become a lawyer?
I was exposed to the criminal justice system from a family member. So I got to see people being arrested, being in the court system. I was exposed to judges and other lawyers very early on in elementary school. I had visited teen court and had a lot of smaller influences. I loved
Okay.
Law and Order, so I wanted to do what they were
Right.
doing on TV. And so that's where it came from.
Well, I noticed also up on my research and doing a little reading, I do read just a little bit, that you were also assistant district attorney. Tell us about that.
Yep. So I was an assistant district attorney for about almost 3 years. I
Yeah.
was here in the county DA's office. I
Okay.
eventually settled into the Special Victims Bureau where I prosecuted domestic violence cases, had some child sex cases on occasion, and other
Okay.
violent sorts of crimes and offenses.
Okay. But then that's not it. College, assistant DA, and then you went and got your own law firm. So tell me
Yeah.
about that.
So once I left the DA's office, I knew I wanted to go into private practice. I knew that I wanted to do defense work. I had
Okay.
had a lot of exposure as a DA, and particularly with defendants at that time, where I saw that some had great representation, but some didn't
Mhm.
really have adequate representation. So when you're dealing with the criminal justice system, it's very difficult because what people don't realize or sometimes think about is this is a person's life.
Right.
So, they're going to be going to jail, if at all, for a year, 10
Hmm.
years, 20 years. And people don't really stop to think for a second that
Right.
that person deserves adequate representation, that that person, it's their life that's in your
Right.
hands. And
Right.
sometimes when I've seen attorneys not give their all, it's
Right.
very disheartening because everybody deserves to have that shot at equal justice.
Well, we're talking about equal justice and talking about certain things, domestic violence, for example, sexual assault. By being a lawyer, and we tend to not just say we, just as a human side of us, we tend to get engrafted into people's lives, and we start to get connected to their pain and suffering. How do you separate that and also be an effective lawyer without taking these things personal, or do you personalize each client?
Um, it's hard to separate the two sometimes, in all honesty.
Mhm.
I think the more
Okay.
you do it, the easier it is to kind of separate. However, you do have those cases
Mhm.
on occasion where it hits so close to home that you
Mhm.
can't really separate it. And as lawyers, like, our job is never over. We don't come home at 5 o'clock and we're done for the day. Like, we're thinking about our cases,
Right.
we're thinking about our clients at 9 o'clock at night. I could be asleep one night and wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and we think about a particular case or client. So you can never really turn it off,
Okay.
unfortunately, but that's also the
Right.
beauty
Okay.
of it.
I was watching a television show called The Good Life. Do you know about that show, about a bunch of lawyers, black, white lawyers on this show? And
Yes.
I noticed that it's a lot of turmoil being involved in lawyers, a lot of, let's just say, craftiness with other lawyers and a lot of trickery going on. Do you find that to happen in real life in the court system?
So the court system is very adversarial. So there's always somebody on the other side that you're fighting with, that you're in disagreement with. So I've definitely seen where it can be very hostile at times. I've had people be hostile with me. It's just the nature of the game and the nature of it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it can be very hostile. And then you've got the spillover into, like, what particular area of law someone may practice. Me, for example, I'm a criminal defense attorney, so I deal a lot with the prosecutors. I deal a lot with the police or federal government or state government. And so Rochester is very small. Everybody kind of gets enmeshed. So then you kind of have sometimes personal grievances with the other person, and it just, but you learn to move past it.
So it's not like the show then. It's a little bit more intense. It's not like the show then. The Good Life is more intense, or is it?
It's very intense. I mean, sometimes you have your downtime where, things are kind of okay, but, it can be very intense at times.
So do you have a lot of underhandedness coming with the profession, where a lot of lawyers are working underhandedly to try to demise your, let's just say if you're an up and coming star in law, they see your gift, they see your talent. Do you see underhandedness sometimes being projected in the law field?
I've seen it before. Unfortunately, sometimes people don't, they're intimidated by you. So when they're intimidated by you, the best thing they can do is try to throw you off, or, get other individuals to maybe feel some type of way about you. But, like I said, those things kind of come with the territory. And as you continue to grow in your practice as an attorney or deal with the attorneys more and more, those things kind of go away. So you end up being okay.
All right. So you said they basically try to throw you under the bus. What's your best way of dealing with this when you see it, though? Some underhandedness and you see it right in your face. What do you do?
My thing is, you always have to act with integrity, no matter what the situation is. Always act with honesty and integrity, and don't let anybody take that from you, because people will try. They absolutely will try, but it's up to you to hold your head held, keep your head high, to do what you're supposed to do, to be ethical. That's a really big part in the practice of law, is ethics, and to do what you're supposed to do. I mean, people are going to say whatever they want to, whether you're doing good or whether you're doing bad.
Right. I noticed when I looked at your attorney at law for your business, you had on there integrity. So that's a big component of you being a lawyer, is having great integrity, right?
Yes.
I see you put that plug. Now, I noticed that you were also in Vice magazine, and they did a story on 4 lawyers. And I read that, but I want to read what I read from the quote that they said. And I want you to elaborate just a little bit on it. It's a great quote. It's on the top. It says, in order to achieve excellence, progress, and institutional change, we all need to have a seat at the table. What does that mean? What table are we talking about? And how can we bring about progress and change in an institution that deals in racism?
So the table that we're talking about with respect to law is the table of high society, the table of justice. And what has been known in the American justice system over time is that, traditionally your judges, your prosecutors, and things of that nature, they're more affluent, they're Caucasian, and there's only that narrow kind of view when it comes to those sorts of people and things. To have a seat at the table as an Afro-Latina, as a woman, when you deal in the justice system, you're dealing with people who come from all types of backgrounds. And so it's important to have individuals involved within the system that have had experience in those backgrounds, can identify with the individuals who are facing the criminal justice system or facing charges, because it's important to be able to relate. When you have a certain demographic who's in power and control, they can't
Mhm.
necessarily relate to the individuals that they're prosecuting or the cases that they're handling. And it's really
Okay.
important to be able to do that because you need individuals that are going to advocate for those
Mhm.
clients, for those defendants. And that seat at the table of people who have different ethnic backgrounds, racial backgrounds, and other things like that, it's important to have that as a part of the seat at the table.
Well, you know what, Safa? A thought just came to mind because we have it in every relationships. When you get into a certain position, we're talking about being a lawyer or a public defender or even just in law in general. How do you deal with those that start out with integrity and ethics, and they really want to help the client or the defendants, but then they switch and become a yes ma'am or yes sir? How do you deal with that? Because that does happen. When you can start out well, but then all of a sudden the pressure comes, and then you switch. You don't want to deal with the pressure. You want to give into the influence of the other side. You see that. So how do you deal with that? But how do you encourage those that are struggling with that right now?
I think in order to be a lawyer, you have to want to fight. It has to be in you, and it's very particular.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's not in you from the moment you become a lawyer or the
Okay.
moment that you start taking cases, then the profession is not for you. You can never be someone that backs down to the government or to judges. Like, you have to advocate for your client. And so it's very important not to become a yes man
Mm-hmm.
in the court system because someone's life is on the line.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're going to go away for a while, if at all. And it's important to really do your job and
Mm-hmm.
fight for them. And I think for defense attorneys, at least, we're required to zealously advocate for our client. So sometimes you hear us getting chewed out and yelled at in a courtroom by a judge, but
Okay.
that's what we have to do to protect the client. And if you can't do that, then you have no space in the profession.
Okay. Kind of a servant. That sounds pretty good. So you do your job as a servant, and that's very, very, very good. Now let's talk about these numbers. You know, I deal with this a little bit, not too much. It's 1.3 in America, but guess what? It's only 61,100 black lawyers. Why do you think there's such a disparity with black lawyers versus other? And we only have 61,100, and 4.7% are females, black lawyers. Why is there such a great disparity?
I think that originally the legal profession came about for a certain demographic of people, the white male elite of society. And over
Mm-hmm.
time, when you deal with us coming out of slavery, us being disabled
Okay.
in the socioeconomic arena and things
Mm-hmm.
like that, it made it difficult, and it still does make it difficult for us as Black people to go to law school, to come out and do our own private practice and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. It's hard to compete. A lot of times people say, well, you know, you're now afforded the opportunities as everybody else. Yeah, we are at this point to a degree, though. We've still been 10 steps behind everywhere. We've still been 10
Mm-hmm.
steps behind where everyone else has been. So we're still trying to make up for that.
Right.
It's difficult to get into law school. And I think that, and what I would personally like to see is attorneys and people in the legal profession go more to speaking to students and things like that so that they can know they can be attorneys and come into the profession and then have that
Mm-hmm.
aspiration to go to law school. And then, you know, the tests are hard. You take your bar exam and you got to find a job. When you're looking for a
Okay.
job post law school, it's important. The law firm culture is a term that we use. You have to look at that. You know, there's not a lot of law firms
Okay.
that have Black people or Latino people. So it can become very intimidating to be going out and trying to get a job
Mm-hmm.
and fit into a certain type of arena or law firm or government position where you don't see anybody that looks like you.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you said it can be intimidating. How do you deal with that when people talk to you as a lawyer? They feel intimidated by you because they equate you with being on the other side of the law, not realizing that you're working with them rather than trying to oppress them with the law. And a lot of people probably look at you and once you say lawyer, they'll be like, oh, hold on, I better not say too much. You know what I mean? So how do you deal with that?
You have to show people you're human. And that's
Okay.
really important thing. As a lawyer, you are a servant. You're there to serve people. You're there to serve your client. And you have to humanize yourself. A lot of times people hear lawyer and they're like, oh my God, or, they kind of get a little freaked
Mm-hmm.
out. But you have to humanize yourself and show the person that you can relate to what they're going through, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully over time that creates kind of a breakdown of the barrier between you and that individual.
Okay.
And they're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. Or, oh, I don't really look at you like a lawyer now. Yeah.
All right. So, I'm laughing because, again, I'm train of thoughts, a lot of things going on. And I'm not going to say we know this because a lot of people don't know this, but what's your feeling on the judicial system as far as being a system that is that the law is not really balanced for everyone? How do you deal with that? And now that you're at the table, how are you going to try to make it more balanced for those that are economically not sound enough, that don't have the money? So it's not just color, but it's also about economics, education, and color. So how do you try to balance that to make it equal for everyone? Because the system is set up to bring it down and really to get convictions for certain demographics.
Mm-hmm. I think to whom much is given, much is required. And as a part of being a servant or being an attorney, you have to acknowledge that, you're going to meet people from all different backgrounds. And you are to serve the people in that community, and no matter what capacity you're in. When you do work for the government, work as a defense attorney, you're more so dealing with, people who live in the community, as opposed to law firms where you're kind of dealing with representing corporations and companies. So it's important to be able to give back. It's important to have humility. One of the things I do is I do have my private practice, but I'm also on an assigned panel through the county for indigent individuals. So you kind of get that balance of, yes, you have your private paid clients, but you also have clients who can't necessarily afford you and traditionally, but you still are able to provide them with the service by sitting on this particular panel so that you can represent them adequately.
Okay. So here's a question for you, because we're talking about 61,100 Black lawyers in America. How do we get more Black, more people of color? I'm not just going to say Black, more people of color interested in becoming lawyers and working in the law field.
I think it's important to go into the schools. I think it's important to get youth and children while they're young, to expose them to the justice system. A lot of times, and at least within the city of Rochester, you can go to a class in the city school district and someone in that class knows someone who's been incarcerated, is going through the judicial system and things like that. A lot of times when you do meet people, they have a lot of questions. And when you get to a child or youth early on to be able to be that and have that influence to direct them into law, you're able to kind of mold them. You're able to make them less afraid. You're able to allow them to see that there are people that look like you that are in this profession, and this is how you do it, to kind of be that guide.
Okay. Now here's another. Have you ever thought about even visiting, not just you, but getting other lawyers involved in just visiting the churches and speaking for maybe 5 or 10 minutes and let those know that there are people like them out there, and to encourage them, maybe get in contact with you and other lawyers, to maybe do not a panel, but just one day brunch and say, hey, this can be you too. Own your own business, be a district attorney, be the president of the United States. They need to see more people like you and us that are successful versus the people that they see in their neighborhood. So have you ever thought about doing that?
Yes. So I thought about it. I've discussed it with some other individuals. There are some groups that are in the community. I think there's a mix of some lawyers, some community activists, excuse me, that kind of do that type of work. There's the Rochester Black Bar Association. So collectively, as attorneys, we've discussed, getting back out to the Black community and going to schools and things like that. Has not happened yet, but that is definitely something that has been in discussion.
Mhm. Well, let's just go here for a moment, because I'm growing up in the impoverished, and you have these children who want to be successful, want an education, but they're hungry, right? And they're dealing with all these other issues and things of that nature. I'm not sure if you dealt with that or not, but how would you encourage them to make it through what they're dealing with? Eventually, fight to become who they want to be, but outside of what they're dealing with on the negative, hunger, parents strung out on looks, this, that, and the third. Education is really dilapidated. They can't study the way they want to because they have so many distractions. So how would you encourage them to persevere through that and reach their dreams and their fullest potential?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I think that I think it's important, and what I would encourage is to have a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Have a mentor, someone that you can identify with, that can kind of guide you when you don't have guidance from anywhere else or from anybody else. Hopefully find someone that you can trust and that is going to guide you in the right direction. I think a lot of our youth at this point are severely misguided. So it's important to find someone who actually cares. With on the home front, I think it's more so on individuals like myself or other attorneys or the adults. I think it's more so on our end that we need to go out and, get a hold of children and things like that, because they don't know how to reach out to adults. They're not in these environments where they can just, oh, hey, will you be my mentor? So I think the school system and the district is a great way to do it. My hope is that, the district can kind of turn things around, for the, inner city youth, and that will kind of provide, they do have us in the schools, that will be able to provide that relationship where we can sort of foster, being a mentor and giving them the guidance they need so that they can persevere in the future, when things do come about.
Okay. So we're going to shift gears just a little bit, get off that. We're going to go to your education. And what type of school and in college, because are grades very, very important to reach the level that you reached? A lot of people don't know grades that. They just think once I get in the 9th grade, or the 12th grade, I got to get my act together. But how important is grades from grammar school on up to becoming in your profession? In other words, to be the best at what they're doing.
You always have to be the best. I'll say that. I'll lead with that. And being an ethnic minority, you have to work 3 times as hard as everybody else. As an ethnic minority, as a woman, you just do. Grades are important. I definitely was probably sort of a B student, few C's, but a B-C student. I mean, we all have those moments where, you're not giving your all. But what I will say is, if you do want to be an attorney, and I lucked out because, I got myself together and in the right direction, but, stay on top of your grades. The grades definitely matter during undergrad. You have to be tight. You have to have A's, you have to have B's, you have to take the law school admission test if your hope is to go to law school. Law schools are looking at your grades freshman through the senior year. So you have to perform with excellence each and every year.
Okay. So you said a mouthful right there. You said from freshman to senior year. How were you get distracted? Because we have these guys on the left hand side or the right hand side called boys or girls. You know what I'm saying? So if you're a male trying to become a lawyer, you have these guys. So how did you keep doing what you're doing without getting distracted by these boys? How
you have to want it bad enough.
Okay.
You have to want it bad enough. You have to want it more than that man, that woman, that you know, going and hanging out with your friends. It was a sacrifice. It was a huge sacrifice. So when everybody was going out and partying and doing whatever, I was home studying. I went to SUNY Buffalo Law School, so I commuted during the week from Rochester to Buffalo to go to class. It's a 3-year sacrifice where, you know, I didn't even get to go to family events. I didn't even get to go on certain trips because I wanted it that bad, and you have to want it that bad. If you don't want it that bad, there's no point in doing it because, I mean, there's no such thing as mediocrity in that area. You have to want it.
Right, right. To want it real bad. Now, Safa, does that mean that you have to be careful who you surround yourself with? There's certain groups and certain people as in your profession that you really can't associate yourself with because it can affect your bottom line. When I say your bottom line, your career, because they said, I'm not going to say guilty by associating you. You know what I mean? Let's just say you hang around alcoholics all day, but you're not an alcoholic. Well, people will assume that you're an alcoholic by your association. And so that hurts your law or what you're trying to do because of the people you hang around. So you have to be leery of that as well. Am I correct?
Yeah. So you have to be mindful of the people you associate yourself with.
Okay. Okay. So how have you been able to do that? Because
staying focused and yourself
so
around the right
now
people.
we're going to talk about this.
You've got to know and learn how to weed people out quick. So, you know, you've got to be able to weed people out fairly quickly. And you have to know that you only get one chance to make a first impression. Who you associate yourself with in certain areas like the law or in the, you know, work arena and things like that. People look at that. There is always someone that's watching you. What do you want to be known for? Do you want to be known for someone who, you know, is an alcoholic or deals with alcoholics? And, you know, I say that respectfully because that certainly is something that, you know, people deal with. It's a difficulty. But what do you want to be known for, I guess would be the first thing is, and how do you make sure that you are always known for that? Just like you always want to be known as someone with integrity, or always want to be known as someone who provides good work or is a good lawyer. And those things have to outweigh, you know, certain things that you may want to do. You know, you may have to let certain people go. Everybody can't go. And people have to, unfortunately, understand that. And when you're trying to become a lawyer or in this sort of profession, it's key because you can't have anybody dragging you down. You can't have anybody putting you in a bad situation where you have to deal with the consequences of what someone else did.
Well, here we go. We're not talking about you in particular when I ask this question, but for an upcoming young lady, and she's interested in becoming an attorney, or a young man who's interested in becoming an attorney, but they have to be particular about who they date as well. Am I correct? Because you can't associate, say for instance, I want to become an attorney. I can't be dealing with let's just say a gangbanger, for example, or a person who's doing drugs. I can't be associated with them because it might affect my long-term goal. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay. No, you're fine. Go ahead.
You have to be careful who you associate yourself with. Like I said before, you know, sometimes the consequences of someone else's actions can fall onto you. And because you're the attorney or because, you know, you're in a certain position, you know, it's all the more reason why you have to be careful. You got a lot to lose when you're a lawyer or someone who's in this type of profession.
Right.
And you have to know that anybody else that's around you has to have a lot to lose too, because if they don't, they will drag you down.
Right. They will drag you down. Okay, Safa, now we're gonna switch again. We've been doing a lot of switching. I do a lot of switching when I talk to people, right? we talked
Mhm.
about racism to a degree, but not too much in detail. We talked about the injustices that's being done in the legal system. Now, by you being an attorney, I'm quite sure you ran across some racist or racism from other people in general that were in that courtroom. How did you handle that and keep your integrity and your composure without getting too involved with, because it can, how did you deal with that in the court system? Something about you that was racist or making, let's just say that were like, I know you, I just know you did. How did you deal with that? Because it's right in your face.
Have to speak. You have
I
to
can't
speak.
hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me? Okay.
Okay.
So did you hear anything I said?
I heard when I've experienced how did I handle it?
Right. Okay. Yeah. How did you deal with that, seeing racings in the court system? Because some judges are racist, and some other lawyers can be racist. You're a defendant, and you have the other lawyer that's very racist, and then the judge that's racist, and you see it. And how did you deal with that and keep your integrity and composure in a courtroom dealing with this, and then yet trying to encourage your client? I got your best interest in hand. Let's not take this personal. We have an objective here to win this case.
Mm-hmm. So it depends. Yep. So it depends on the situation.
Did you get it?
Sometimes you have overt things that just happen in the courtroom and off the fly. In those situations, in the couple that I've had, I've spoken out immediately. Accountability. Judges need to be accountable. Other attorneys need to be accountable, and you need to be accountable for what you say. So in those instances, what I've done is I've gone on the record, and you see the stenographer in the courtroom happen that it is rape. And what I've done in certain instances is order those transcripts.
Right.
And some to really use those when necessary to know the racism within the court, like that. And just speaking out.
Okay.
Like, judge, that was so inappropriate. That was racist.
Right.
I realize it. So then you use that as a moment to educate as to why that was racist or whatever the case may be. In cases where, a prosecutor is racist or the government's, the way they're handling a particular case is racist, harder. The biggest thing in those sorts of cases is community support, community exposure, really letting helping the community advocate for your client in that way. One of the going on right now, back in the riots or the Black Lives Matter protests, what the DA's office did and what the Rochester Police Department was, when they arrested certain individuals, they exiled them to federal court. So they charged individuals in state court, they charged them in federal court to what we call laterally prosecute those particular defendants. And with respect to these sorts of cases, you charging them with rioting, or they're allowing plea offers to rioting. And the difficulty is that some of these statutes haven't been used in years. The only federal court where you could have just charged the person in state court is because, the DA's office is very pro-police. Very pro-police. So I think what they tried to do was leverage the community so pissed off into, forcing individuals to take a plea or go to trial. We've got situations where the DA's office is saying, guy needs to plead in federal court. If he plea in federal court, then we're going to go forward, and he's looking at 8 years with us. And then you've got the U.S. Attorney's Office who's like, no, we're going to prosecute no matter what. We're not sending this case back to court because we want our blood. And how just is that? The prosecutor's job is to do justice.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't be to get a conviction. And when you're dealing with, and for example, the Black Lives Matter protests and things, I mean, people are angry and they're hurt and they're responding to the injustice that have been done to them. And now you arrest them and you do more injustice by charging them in state court and in court and going all the way on cases that haven't been used for 50 to 100 years. It's ridiculous.
Right. Now that is crazy, because you're going from a state level to a federal level. But they also use bullying tactics, and I know you see that a lot, because when you don't know the law, let's say for instance, I come to court, don't know the law at all. Well, if you don't take cop out, or you take it to trial, you can face 15 to 20 years. And a lot of people take the plea because they're scared. But then a lot of people also take the plea and they have a caseload that's so huge, but then you have just stained your life because you took a plea, even though you might not be guilty. I have seen some cases where people have copped out and they could have got lesser, but they were these, I call them bullying tactics and fear tactics. How do you deal with that? How people are supposed to deal with that, because they're not being properly represented, for one, but then you have the DA or the assistant DA, and then you have the judge and all these people coming at me saying, man, if you don't take this charge, you're facing 15 to 20 years, and that might not even be the case. So how should people deal with that? Because they don't have money to afford the proper attorney.
So it is a bullying tactic. That's exactly what it is. There's no way around that. My hope is that eventually we will have good prosecutors that know how to do justice. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you. And so when you come and when you deal with the proper representation, it's important for entities like the Public Defender's Office to have the proper training for their attorneys. I think there was something just implemented that public defenders can't carry a caseload of more than 50, I believe. So that certainly will hopefully help public defenders be able to clients and give them adequate representation and time that they defend their case. It's hard when individuals don't have, the money to go. Like I said, there is a county where there are some of us private that volunteer to represent individuals. We are obviously compensated, but it's for indigent individuals, and you have really great attorneys on there who do provide that service. And it's used when the public defender has a conflict on a case, but if an individual can utilize that, and honestly, it doesn't matter. I mean, you got great public defenders, you've got great private attorneys, you got crappy public defenders, and private attorneys, like, they don't even do their job. So whether it's public or private, it doesn't really matter. You just need the right attorney that's going to fight and advocate.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, because you have to have the right attorney, because a lot of, I'm not going to say a lot of them, but some people get in certain careers because of money. They don't get in to serve. They get in because of the power, the prestige, and for money. And so it's almost like pulling straws, and hopefully you'll get the right person to defend you. So that's a chance. But
what I say,
everyone, because I want to talk to you about this, because this is Black history.
What I say is that
go ahead.
Every person has a right to have an attorney of their choosing. You have to be comfortable with your attorney. You have to have a bonded relationship with your attorney that you don't have with anybody else. And everybody has some reason you find yourself in a situation where you're not comfortable with your attorney. You need to speak up. Whether public defender's office or a private practitioner, you have to speak up.
it's Black. I'm thinking about this wonderful guy by the name of Martin Luther King, where he wanted equality and justice. Do you think that we're making progress in the justice system since the march that Martin Luther King had in the 60s? Or do you still think there's, I was reading a book called Black Robe, White Justice by a judge in New York City. And in this book, he was saying, even though I'm wearing a black robe, it's still all about white justice and inequality in the court system. Do you think that we're making progress too? Do you think we're still at a standstill?
I think we're making slow progress, very slow. And I believe that because judges are usually old. And as those judges retire,
right,
age out, as we call it, you have a new wave, a new breed of judges that are coming in. They're younger, they are Black, and so we're kind of seeing a shift here in Rochester with who's sitting on the bench. So we have 2 Monroe County Court judges, Judge Morrison and Judge Karen Bailey Turner, who are the county court judges who are Black women. We've got Nicole Morrison, Rochester City Court, and a number of other judges that are young, that are Black or Latina. So there is that shift, but it's a very slow shift. So as you have different demographics have a seat at that table, it does kind of shift the pendulum a little bit in terms of, yes, it's traditionally white justice or justice for those who can afford it, where you have individuals like them or who can relate to people in the community, really their past experiences to what's before them. So I think there's a slow shift, but I definitely feel very white privileged, and even more so that it's socioeconomic status. People who can afford private often get better outcomes when at trial. They're more so out of custody. So whether an individual is not in or out of custody or in and out of jail, definitely impacts their case. Got a jury who's looking at someone in jail uniform versus those, they're more likely to convict a person in jail uniform. So having that, it's important, and it definitely affects the individual's, outcome within the justice system. But there's a slow shift.
I noticed that you is social economic. I'm looking at my list, and you had the biggest issues with our judicial system is racism and social economics and inequity. Can you please explain that? What is inequity? A lot of people don't know what that is.
Inequity deals with inequality, and with respect, we've talked about race, talk about socioeconomic status and finance. You've got people who can afford private, and you've got people who can't. And what it should be is a blanket equal justice application for all. We don't see that. Attorneys have relationships where we can, get better plea offers for clients or have certain working relationships that do benefit us. I mean, you've got judges who traditionally will give deference to private attorneys. We go first in court outside the we have less clients, so we're able to give that attention to those particular clients. And when you don't have that, you've got to go with the public defender's office. Like we said, overworked, they're underpaid, and sometimes very underappreciated, because like I said, there are very good public defenders. So, it's unfortunate. It can be difficult with economic status.
Okay. One question for you. Do you have plans of ever becoming a judge? Or you just gonna, are you still gonna you want to stay in private practice?
It has certainly crossed my mind. I will be saving that for later in my career. I love to be in the courtroom. I love trial work. That's where my focus will continue to be at this point. Maybe in the future, in 10 years or so, that changes.
Right. Okay, because when you come to the table, every now and then you got to change your seat.
That's
So
true.
I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to you changing your seat. One more question, and it's really not a question. In closing, what would you like to say to people, and how can they contact you if they need a lawyer? A lot of young girls out there are Latino and Black, or just women, young women in general. How can you encourage them to pursue their dreams? Because a lot of them have been torn up. What you're talking about, everything. How can we encourage them to fight and pursue their dreams? And at the end, how can people contact you as far as becoming their attorney?
It's important whether you're male or female, because it happens to both. Know your worth. You know, it's very important to know your worth.
Okay.
It's very important to put you first. You know, my dad always used to say, "There's nobody more important." And I hope that young girls are going to internalize that and really use making decisions, you know, and who you date or what career or profession you go in. Is put yourself first. You can't please everybody, but you have to please yourself, and you have to do what's best for you at all times.
Right, right.
Always act with integrity. Keep your word.
Okay.
And you know, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you need help, because we all need help from time to time. Nobody's ever too strong to not need it.
Right.
Don't hesitate to reach out to someone that you can trust, whether it's a mentor, family member, a friend. You know, make sure that you're not going through whatever you're going through alone. We've all been through something, so there's always somebody that can relate. They want to reach me at 585-204-0993. That's usually the best way to reach. And we do have a Facebook page. You can check that out as well.
Okay, that sounds good, everybody. Thank you, Safa, for coming to a Level Up show. My name is Wayman Daniels, and we're going to end here. But my next week's guest, believe it or not, you guys, is Guy. He's a meteorologist and author from the Twin City. He's nationally known. Oh man, we're getting bigger and bigger, man. We got a lawyer. Now we're getting a meteorologist and an author. Next week, Friday at 5:00 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Central Time. We look forward to having you. Thank you, Safa, for coming. I look forward to speaking with you as well after we get off this call, okay, the show. All right, you guys be good and have a great day. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.